Okay, guys, so after you receive the contract, you get the contract offer and you're ready to get started. So it is important to think about the facility, especially when you are trying to get the contract. And they usually tell you most contracts they disclose they do disclose where you're going. They will tell you the location, they will tell you the city, they will tell you the name of the hospital that you're going to be working at. So, except when it indicates of crisis or state contracts, for instance, you go there, they usually have you at one hotel after waiting, and there's something it's called staging, where they have you there. That's where they process all your information, especially credentialing, and then after that they will assign you to a facility. And if that's not the case, when you sign a contract, you already know where you're going. Okay, so do your homework. Do some research about the city, about housing, about the hotels, about the place itself. So, for example, some travel nurses, some travel respiratory therapists, they like Epic, for instance, as EMR. So, and others will like Cerner, and some places like Meditech. Some folks like Meditech. So, and sometimes I know that can be a tiebreaker for some RTs, some RNs. So what you can do, it's very easy. You call. Once you know where you're going, you know the name of the facility, you can call, and when you talk to the operator, just ask them, I am so and so, and I'm gonna be a travel nurse or a travel respiratory therapist starting whatever time you know you're starting, and you tell them, can I please ask you about the EMR system that you use? And they will tell you. And let's say if you go into work as a respiratory therapist, and then you want to also know how many how whether you're working as a respiratory therapist or as a nurse, you can, if you want to know how big is the facility, sometimes you can do a Google search. It does not give you the all the information, so you can also ask how many beds. You ask the questions, because it can make a big difference. I've seen people leaving a contract or breaking a contract because they go to a facility, for instance, they use one EMR system and they are not familiar with, and they'll end up leaving the contract because they say that's too much. Okay. Keep in mind that you get there and you get started, you're going to start working, you're going to hit the ground running. So that's what they expect you to do. So sometimes, if you know ahead of time, and that helps even before you accept the contract, even when you're being interviewed by the recruiter, if you can ask them, do you know the name of the facility? If so, do you know what system they use? And I know some recruiters are very upfront about providing that information before you even ask, but it makes sense. So now, talking about housing, okay? So one thing with housing, you have a few options. Again, just as I said before in the previous video, you can sometimes the company, the agency will provide that for you, or you can get the stipend to pay to find a place for yourself. And some people, they have great luck finding a place using Airbnb platform or Furnish Finder, or hotels can also be cheaper depending on the season, depending on the time of the year. That can be an option. So all right, so you have requested information about the facility. You're okay with everything, and you find out, the location and how you're gonna commute. That's one thing too. Whether you're gonna take your vehicle versus renting a car when you get there. Okay, so let's say you living in the East Coast, and then you're gonna take a contract in the West Coast, and of course it can be about almost 2 days driving. Okay, sometimes going with your car, it's a good thing depending on how far is it. And some people don't mind the driving, they drive the whole time. 2 days driving, one day 24-hour driving, they go with their car. Sometimes it depends on in the city in which you're going, because some rental cars are very cheap. Okay, so that's one thing to consider when you go into your location. Housing, transportation, and also the facility itself. And you know, let's say your specialty is going to be ICU. You know, you can ask about the ratio too before you even go. And sometimes your recruiter has that information for you beforehand. And as a respiratory therapist, you can ask, you know, if for instance, you know, they're gonna put you on the floor only because you're a traveler, or versus ICU, or versus NICU, more critical care settings. So you can ask the question, ask your recruiter. If your recruiter does not know that information, they can either find that out for you, or you can find out yourself. Okay, so it makes sense to get that information beforehand. And second, now that you have you found the position and you received the offer, and I want you to point this out. Sometimes we don't pay attention. Just because the numbers look good, we don't pay attention. So some of the offers are based on specialties. For instance, if you are a critical care nurse, you are an ICU nurse. So they will say, you know, they need ICU nurses and they pay X amount of money plus the stipend. And if you are a med surg nurse versus a ER nurse versus a PCU nurse versus a PICU nurse or NICU nurse, so pay attention to the position being offered, and when they send you a contract, make sure they list exactly what your specialty of choice. For instance, sometimes the contract may include the word floating. Okay, so that means they said, okay, although your specialty is ICU or med surg, but you may float to a different area. So one thing to pay attention to is that you can float to the lower specialty, but not in the upper level. Let's say if you do med surg, tele, you know, it does not make sense to be floated to ICU, okay? Because that's not your specialty, and you're gonna get there, and that can be your last day of working there, because you're probably gonna get upset. You said, "I've never done ICU before," and you're probably gonna break the contract because it's not part of your contract, okay? So pay attention to that, and also pay attention to the specialty to which the offer is being sent. Okay, the contract is being offered. So pay attention to the specialty. So, for instance, respiratory therapists, I know there are some contracts out there that said NICU therapist. Okay, then you only hired for NICU, but sometimes you can float to ICU, you can float to med surg. That's to the floor area. So that's not a problem. But sometimes, if it has been a long time, or if you don't, you haven't had a lot of experience in NICU, and then they send you to NICU to work, that can be a problem. You know, it's that time, you don't really have much time for orientation. That's something that can push you over the edge. That's something you always want to ask. You know, one thing you don't want to do is, you know, you have to act as a professional, right? You are a professional. You want to be a professional. You want to maintain your calm. You want to maintain your composure. So some people that can get very angry when they float them. Okay, if your contract says that is something that is possible as far as floating, as long as it's not out of the scope of your practice, I would say, you know, you take it, because just keep that in mind. You go to the facility to help. Okay, first and foremost, that's why they brought you in. That's why they're paying you well for that. So regardless of what you make, but what you're making for the contract, but just if you have accepted the contract, you took the assignment, just know that you're there to help. Okay, that is the number one goal. So if you get floated to one area, and I've seen a lot of nurses, respiratory therapists being upset, but if it's already part of your contract, that's something you agreed to, you know, you just hope that they don't float you, but it can happen, and I've seen it happen many times, especially during the crisis season. So you can get floated. That is something that you need to keep that in mind. Okay. So the next thing, after you get the contract, you receive the contract, everything looks fine. You negotiated your contract, you signed it, and you send it back to them. And there's something called credentialing. Okay, that's when the recruiter will tell you, my HR department, the credentialing department, they will introduce you with someone else in the office where they're gonna send a lot of paperwork for you. So of course, including the application. So bear in mind, sometimes you send your resume, and how do you get a contract? I wanted to point that out for you. It's when you see the job posted, it's just sending your resume, and then plus sometimes they ask for 2 or 3 references from your previous jobs, or people who can give references on your behalf. So therefore, you send that information, they kind of get you a contract, they get you the offer. After that, they ask you to do the application. So it can be done prior you receiving the contract or after you finish the application. Now a lot of people have hard time. They think just because they sign a contract and it's over, they're done. But keep that in mind, credentialing will take time and can take time. First of all, you have to do a drug test, a drug screen, okay? And you have to send your immunization records, and sometimes I'll tell you it can be hard to find. So always keep everything in mind. If you think about traveling, I already have these things ready, okay? And your certifications, your BLS, your ACLS, your PALS, your NRP. So they're gonna ask for these credentials, and NIH, if you do critical care, or even med-surg tele, a lot of places now are asking for nurses. They ask for the NIH NIHSS certification. So that's something they added to it. So have these things available, okay? And that's one thing. We can take time to get all this paperwork done, everything done. So, and it is important to note that the sooner you get this ready, you send them, you email them. It's just a quick email to the credentialing department, and they will get things ready for you. And in the event that you don't have everything, they will send you to the lab. Of course, they're gonna send you to the lab in your state, in your city. You just have to give them the zip code. They will send you to the lab to get things done. Okay, however many immunizations record that you need or vaccines that you need versus TB information. So either you're gonna take the PPD test, or you're gonna do now, because we're using the N95 for airborne percussion, so they want a fit test too. Okay, so they want a medical doctor to approve that. So they're gonna send you to a place. So credentialing can take a lot of times, and it's a lot of paperwork. But one thing I can tell you: when they start sending you emails, don't sleep on it. Don't just say, okay, I'll get to it when I can. So if you wanna get started as soon as possible, the moment they send you emails with all the instructions of what you need to get, what you need to gather to send to them, you just have to get on it and get it done. And lastly, I want to talk about the orientation process. Now that you have everything ready and credential cleared you get cleared by credentialing department, you get cleared by the facility to start, and you got the first day instructions, where to report and what time to report there. So now you're going to talk about orientation. So where people get disappointed based on their first day of orientation. So they think sometimes you go there and then you're going to get a few weeks of orientation, especially if that's your first time, okay? And even those who have been traveling for a while, they said on the last assignment, I received 3 to 5 days of orientation. On this assignment, they're only providing 1 day of orientation. So they get disappointed, they get mad, and you can hear it across the room. People will voice the frustrations out. So what I'm saying is, some places, some facilities, they will give you only 1 day of orientation. So if you work in night shift versus day shift, so you're gonna do your orientation at night if you work in night. If you work day shift, your orientation will be during the day. And sometimes the orientation is the whole day, the whole 12 hours, and you do some computer training, then you go to the floor and finish the rest of it. And then the next time you come back to work, you hit the ground running. So keep that in mind. It's not a lot of time. So that's why most agencies I've seen out there, the minimum requirements to start traveling is 2 years. Okay, you have that, but again, you have to check with the agency for which you're going to work, so to see whatever their requirements. There can be some changes there, so that's fine too. They will tell you what they want. So what I'm saying today is, you want to make sure your orientation is something that you're gonna be disappointed on. You just have to know, some places they only offer 1 day of orientation, some places 2 days of orientation. And orientation is usually show you the computer system, go over some protocols, some policies with you, and then have you sign some paperwork, and then hit the floor. Because if you already know nursing is the same everywhere you go. If the process is the same, so if you know respiratory, it's the same every state you go. There may be slight changes as far as how much you're allowed to do versus what you're not allowed to do. Some liability issues there, but that happens. But I want to tell you that you receive the contract, you know where you're going, you know the location, you do your due diligence and find out what you want to what they're doing there, and about housing, you get that under control, and then you sign the contract. You know for which specialty you sign the contract for, and your stipend, all your benefits, everything is included. And then talking about for your contract, I want to point that out too. Holiday pay, and then time off. Sometimes they ask you if you want any time off during the contract or after the contract is over, or before the contract. So you have to know, if you're gonna be going on vacation 2 weeks into your contract, 3 weeks into your contract, tell them. Some hospitals, some facilities will work with you, some recruiters will work with you, but make sure you point that out. You tell them, because you don't want to ask the facility for time off after you sign the contract. It's best to ask the recruiter, the agency, so that you're gonna need a week off, 2 weeks in your contract, whatever the case may be. But make sure you communicate that with them. And credentialing, make sure you get on it as soon as possible. The moment you get these emails, start working on them. And believe me, even though they may seem there are a lot to do, and part of the credentialing also, there are some tests thereof that you have to take if you do respiratory or critical care. So sometimes nursing as a whole, if you do critical care, more some specialties require more tests versus less, depending on your specialty. So if that's something you're gonna be doing, make sure you get on these tests. They can take time, and get on it. So they use most places now use the prophecy. So that's where you get your skills done and you get everything done, and make sure you get a high grade. I think most tests require 80 or higher to continue to the next one to take. They offer some EKG testing as well. So you want to be proficient in EKG reading, so you want to do all that. So that's all I have for you today. I hope that this video was helpful to you. And again, this is not financial advice, this is not legal advice, this is just for entertainment and educational purposes only. In this channel, like I said before, I share information about different topics related to healthcare. So I believe strongly that knowledge is inspiring, so I just want to inspire you. If that's something you want to do, travel as a respiratory therapist or nursing. So I want to tell you today that to make sure you keep yourself safe out there, keep safe out there. And I know it's a moment of crisis, but we appreciate what you do. We thank you so much for what you do. And I know I always say this: you were created to do good works, and I applaud you for that, and continue doing good work. And until next time, I'll see you on the next video. Hasta la vista.